which is an architectural salvage yard run by a guy called John. I've never been to their salvage yard, never been.
Gone. More than 620 items went under the hammer, raising nearly $800,000, but this wasn't about money. It was about release. A man emptying his soul off the very things that once defined him. Fans were stunned. Why would thinking of British salvage strip his life bare? The answer was written not in the price tags of antiques, but in the cracks of a man who had carried too much for too long. To understand why Drew walked away from the treasures that built his empire, you have to go back to the very beginning, to a childhood buried under cold stone walls, tight budgets, and even tighter dreams. Drew Pritchard was born in February 1970 in Conwy, a medieval town on the rugged north coast of Wales. The place looked like a postcard, ancient walls, sea winds, and narrow lanes that never changed with time. But life behind those postcard images wasn't easy. The Pritchard family lived modestly. His parents ran a small corner shop that barely covered the bills, and winters often meant layering blankets to stay warm. In the 1970s, the local economy was collapsing and jobs were vanishing faster than anyone could find them. Drew grew up surrounded by struggle. But within him, there was something different. While other kids chased footballs in the street, Drew chased stories. He saw beauty in rust, potential in things everyone else threw away. He was only 8 when his fascination truly began. Most boys' Heisage wanted toys. Drew wanted trash, old cans, bottle caps, rusted metal. It was all treasure to him. He collected over 500 bottle caps by 1978 and even used them as fake currency with classmates. To most, he was just the odd boy who hoarded junk. But to Drew, each atom whispered history. That fascination was a spark lit by his grandfather, a World War II veteran who used to tell stories of hidden treasures and smuggled relics from battlefields across Europe. Those bedtime tales planted a seed that never stopped growing. Drew began exploring alleys, scrapyards, and old dumps, searching for relics of the past that no one else noticed. By the time he was 12, Drew had a small museum in his backyard, an unorganized pile of history that included coins, broken toys, and war memorabilia worth nearly $200 at the time. His parents didn't understand it. Them, he was just filling their home with junk. But Drew wasn't collecting, he was learning. Learning about craftsmanship, materials, and stories buried in every object. His father, a skilled signwriter who painted pub signs with real gold leaf, would sometimes let Drew watch him work. That's where Drew's love for restoration was born. But behind that beauty was danger. Lead-based paints, toxic fumes, and the toll it took on his father's health. By the early 1980s, his dad's hands trembled from exposure to those same paints that made his work so stunning. At just 10 years old, Drew started using his father's discarded tools to fix things. Anything broken he could get his hands on. Once, while repairing a vintage wind-up car from the 1950s, he was electrocuted and had to get stitches. But even that couldn't stop him. He scavenged old bicycles from neighbors' bins, fixed them, and sold them at the market for pocket change. His backyard soon looked like a scrapyard itself, filled with spare parts, old wood, and piles of junk. The neighbors complained about rats. His parents argued endlessly about it. But for Drew, it wasn't a mess. It was magic. By age 12, he had sold 50 restored items and earned nearly $300, which he saved for better tools. In a house where money was scarce, Drew had already figured out a way to make his own. But childhood wasn't just about dreams. It was about survival. In 1982, a devastating flood hit their family shop, wiping out $1,000 worth of goods. For his parents, it was heartbreak. For Drew, it was a lesson. He salvaged while they could, drying, scrubbing, and stacking ruined items, refusing to let them rot. That was the moment he realized his purpose, saving history from destruction. Still, life was heavy. His school, Isle Aberanwy, offered little refuge. Drew struggled with reading and writing, falling into the bottom of his class. Teachers called him lazy, not realizing he had dyslexia. He skipped classes, more than 100 by some counts, not to cause trouble, but to explore old quarries and buildings. Once he stumbled into a hidden World War II bunker buried in slate dust. It was dangerous and forbidden, but he couldn't stay away. It wasn't rebellion. It was destiny calling from the shadows. Despite his academic failures, Drew's artistic side flourished. His drawings of derelict Victorian buildings caught teachers' attention. And in 1983, he won a small regional art prize, $50 that meant the world to him. It wasn't about the money. It was validation. But the risks he took kept escalating. In 1984, he fell through the floor of an abandoned mill, breaking his arm. He told no one, afraid his parents would forbid his adventures. By 15, he had explored more than 40 abandoned sites, gathering artifacts worth around $500. He drew treasure maps, led classmates on exploration trips, and became known locally as the boy who finds things. That fearless curiosity would one day make him a millionaire, but also nearly destroy him. When Drew turned 15, he started working part-time at a car restoration garage in Land Dude. No. It was 1985 and he was earning just $2 an hour, spending long days covered in oil and grit. But the work taught him everything. How to weld, fix engines, and restore metal to its former glory. He fell in love with classic cars, especially old Jaguars and Triumphs. By 1986, he had helped restore nearly 20 cars and learned the art of detail, sanding, painting, rebuilding, the same patience that later made him an antiquer. But the garage wasn't all honest work. The owner, a former race car driver, had ties to black market parts trading. Drew didn't know it at first, but when the police raided the shop in 1987, seizing $10,000 worth of stolen goods, Drew walked away, scarred and wiser. That was his first brush with the darker side of business, one that would revisit him years later. Still, Drew's drive was unstoppable. Around this time, he made his first true find. In a dusty junkyard, buried under rust and trash, he discovered a Victorian gas lamp stamped with the name William Sugg, a rare designer from the 1880s. Drew bought it for a few pounds, cleaned it for hours, and sold it for $50. That small sale meant everything. It proved he could see value where others saw garbage. From that day, he wasn't just a boy who fixed things. He was a picker. Over the next year, he salvaged 15 more items, earning a few hundred, though the yard was contaminated with asbestos. Decades later, Drew would admit he feared those early years might have affected his health. But back then, the thrill outweighed the risk. By 17, Drew was addicted to the hunt. He spent nights sleeping in his van, chasing rumors of old barns or estate clearances. His parents were furious, calling his obsession a waste of time. During one heated argument, Drew packed his things and left, living out of his van for a week. But freedom tasted too good to give up. That same year, he made $2,000 flipping antiques, more than his parents' yearly savings. It was official. He had found his calling. But behind his growing success, storms were already forming, storms that would one day bring everything crashing down. By the late 1990s, Drew Pritchard was no longer just a name whispered at antique fairs. He was becoming a force in British restoration. His eye for design, his ability to see art in decay, and his sheer obsession for history set him apart. In 1993, he opened his first showroom in Conway, a small space filled with architectural antiques, ornate fireplaces, carved stone pieces, church pews, and industrial lighting. At first, it was a towering success. Locals thought it was odd, even pretentious, to sell old junk as luxury decor. But Drew didn't care. He was chasing authenticity, not trends. Slowly, designers and collectors began to notice him. One deal led to another, and by 1998, his shop had become a hidden gem for people seeking unique British heritage pieces. Every sale, every restored relic was proof that his childhood obsession had finally found its place in the world. The early 2000s brought Drew into a new chapter, television. When the producers of a news show called Salvage Hunters approached him in 2010, he hesitated. Drew wasn't a performer. He was a picker, a man who preferred dusty barns to bright lights, but his wife at the time, Rebecca, saw potential. Together, they turned their shared business into something extraordinary. The show debuted in 2011 on Quest TV and quickly became a hit. Viewers loved Drew's sharp eye, his dry wit, and his ability to negotiate treasures out of the unlikeliest corners of Britain. His chemistry with Rebecca, elegant, intelligent, and calm in contrast to his manic enthusiasm, made them one of the most charming duos on British television. Alongside his right-hand man, Drew traveled the country in search of history's forgotten masterpieces. His world had become a moving museum, and the public couldn't get enough of it. Over the next decade, Salvage Hunters became more than just a TV show. It became a brand. There were spin-offs, international versions, and celebrity clients who called him directly. Drew's showroom became a pilgrimage site for designers and collectors from around the world. His charisma and unapologetic attitude made him a television star. But behind the confident exterior, cracks were starting to form. Fame, success, and pressure came at a cost. The same obsessive energy that fueled his success began to consume his personal life. Drew had spent years chasing perfection in antiques, in business, in himself. But perfection comes with a price. Rumors began to circulate about Drew's personal life, the kind that didn't fit the clean, professional image viewers saw on screen. In 2017, his marriage to Rebecca came to an end after years of strain. They had built everything together, the business, the brand, the family. But success had changed them both. The endless filming schedules, the travel, and the weight of fame had created distance. Their split wasn't a tabloid explosion. It was quiet but devastating. Fans were heartbroken. Salvage Hunters had lost its beloved partnership. Yet, both Drew and Rebecca continued to work together on the show, an arrangement that required grace, patience, and strength most couldn't imagine. Behind every filmed scene was a man trying to keep his professional world intact while his personal one was falling apart. Then came another storm, one that nearly ended Drew's public image entirely. In 2017, he was banned from several pubs in his hometown of Conway after reports of altercations and a public scandal involving an affair. The story spread quickly through local newspapers, painting Drew as volatile and arrogant. Overnight, the charming picker was suddenly the subject of gossip and criticism. The public that had once adored him began to question who his ally was. It was a harsh fall from grace. He was no longer the hero of forgotten treasures. He had become a man haunted by his own mistakes. Drew kept working, kept filming, kept smiling for the cameras, but those close to him could see the exhaustion behind his eyes. Years of fame, stress, and heartbreak had left deep scars. By 2019, Drew tried to retreat from the noise. His once bustling showroom in Conway, landmark for fans, closed its doors. The announcement shocked his loyal followers. People wondered if it was the end of Salvage Hunters altogether. But Drew didn't vanish entirely. He shifted his business online, selling rare antiques through private collectors and digital catalogs. The man who had built his empire through physical discovery was now adapting to a quieter, more private world. Still, something inside him was breaking. Decades of chasing, restoring, and performing had left him drained. The man who once found joy in saving forgotten things had begun to feel forgotten himself. Through all the turmoil, Drew's bond with his son became his anchor. He often spoke about how proud he was of him, seeing reflections of his younger self, curious, creative, and bold. It was a reminder that even as fame faded and mistakes lingered, legacy remained. Drew continued to film new seasons of Salvage Hunters, but the tone had changed. There was less bravado, more reflection. He seemed calmer, humbler, as if the chaos of the past had finally taught him to slow down. The once fiery and impatient negotiator now spoke more about craftsmanship, sustainability, and preservation. The show evolved with him, less about profit, more about appreciation. Yet, behind the success of the ongoing series, Drew was quietly preparing for something no one expected. In 2024, the auction happened. Over 620 items from Drew's personal collection, the fairground boat, vintage signs, motorbikes, even pieces from Buckingham Palace, all went under the hammer. It was an emotional earthquake. Fans thought he was downsizing, maybe retiring. But those close to him knew the truth. Drew wasn't selling things, he was letting go of burdens. Every object represented a piece of his past, the highs, the heartbreaks, the stories that had defined him. The sale raised more than $800,000.